No plan of this scale has ever been imagined by a past mayor, let alone proposed.
America, Tuesday, May 26, Zohran Mamdani stood in front of a crowd in Brooklyn. He held up a 112-page document. He called it block by block, a housing plan for the new era. $22 billion in capital investment over the next 5 years, 200,000 new affordable homes over the next 10 years. And he said no mayor in the history of New York City has ever imagined a plan this big. Every single channel ran that number, and here's the number that nobody ran next to it. 2 months earlier, March 25th, Mamdani's own lawyers walked into New York Court of Appeals, the highest court of the entire New York City establishment, and they filed a brief argument that a different housing program was too expensive for the city to afford. $10 billion over 5 years. That is the program. That is the number. And that's what the lawyers are in court right now fighting to block. $10 billion. Too expensive. $22 billion. The urgency the moment demands. But here's the part that cost them the most, and it's the part that none of these cameras caught at that podium. The woman who now runs one of the biggest homeless shelters in New York sat down with reporters and said on record that Mamdani promised time and time again to drop that exact lawsuit before ever announcing $1 of his housing plan. He promised, he won the election, and then his lawyers filed a new appeal. What is up, guys? Tyson DeLaCruz here. Thank you so much for rocking with me. Before I take you to the courtroom, you are getting the plan itself clean and honest and straightforward and as simple as possible as I can make it, because some of it is genuinely real here. And this audience deserves a straight version of everything before we get to see what's actually missing from the situation. May 26th in Brooklyn, the neighborhood behind Mamdani is under active construction, recently rezoned. So the zoning changed. Cranes in the background. This is phenomenal optics for Mamdani. The announcement here, $22 billion in city capital over 5 years to build 220,000 new affordable rent stabilized homes over the next 10 years. Another 200,000 homes preserved and stabilized. A separate $5.6 billion commitment to fix NYCHA. That is the city's public housing authority, which has broken elevators, mold, bursted pipes, people living in that area and no heat for years and years and years. A new $40 per hour wage floor for construction workers on city finance project. A city-backed insurance program for affordable housing developers because their insurance costs have more than doubled over the recent years. Those last two pieces address real problems. Watch the people who live in NYCHA buildings and actually show up to that announcement.
Oh my God, where do I start? Mold, like the building separating, water leaks, like it's raining, there's icicles inside the apartments in the wintertime.
Critics pointing out that fixing the city's NYCHA buildings would take more like $80 billion, making the mayor's investment seem like a drop in the bucket.
Icicles inside an apartment in New York City and the $5.6 billion commitment to fix it, which is real money for real problems, is 7 cents on the dollar against the $80 billion that experts say it would actually take. The people in those buildings know it. They cheered anyways because 7 cents is honestly better than nothing. And that is what the city has been mismanaging for so long, that the people cheer. They cheer for crumbs. Cheering for crumbs. That is what happens when you trust a system that has failed you long enough, and your retirement is sitting in that same exact system right now. I don't want you to cheer for crumbs. I don't cheer for crumbs. I don't want crumbs. My generational wealth and money isn't something that no mayor, no elected official, no court brief, no press conference can touch. That is why I am proud to partner with today's video sponsor, Noble Gold Investments. Noble Gold Investments, physical gold and silver held in your name in an IRS-approved vault. Roll over your existing 401k or IRA with zero taxes and zero penalties. The dollar has lost over 97% of its purchase purchasing power since 1913. Gold just hit an all-time high of $5,600. Central banks worldwide are buying gold at record levels. Smart money moves before the crisis does, and you absolutely know it. Visit Noble Gold at noblegoldinvestments.com/Tyson or call 877-646-5347. Now, here's the no past mayor claim. Listen carefully.
We face one of the most severe housing crises in American history. It is the single largest driver of the affordability crisis.
And now, in response, the mayor is pledging his administration will lead an effort to build 200,000 new affordable units of housing and preserve another 200,000 units of housing over the next decade. Although numerous groups that study the housing deficit in New York say the city desperately needs even more homes.
This housing that we're talking about, it's going to be affordable for New Yorkers.
The NYCHA investment is new. The wage floor is new. The insurance program is new. But one specific sentence no past mayor can ever imagine. NewYorkCity.gov, NYC.gov itself contradicts it. That matters because the entire political promise of the announcement depends on it being unprecedented, abnormal, incredible. It has precedent, and that's before we get to what's happening in Albany.
The New York Apartment Association says the plan falls short of addressing the crisis facing rent-stabilized units, which make up 40% of NYC rentals. Ann Korchak is with the small property owners of New York.
It seems a lot more to do with housing politics than housing policy. And I'm worried about weaponization of a housing agency, HPD.
The plan does include working with private developers. The Real Estate Board of New York said, we question why the city would choose to make projects more expensive to build through the addition of costly and inflexible project labor agreements.
Plain English, because that's not complicated. Every New Yorker needs to understand what Mamdani's administration is in court fighting against right now. CityFHEPS, that's CityFHEPS. It stands for City Fighting Against Homelessness and Eviction Prevention Supplement. Here's what it actually does. If you're in New York and you can't afford the gap between what you earn and what rent actually costs, or you're facing eviction, if you're in a city shelter, if you are one paycheck away from losing your apartment, this program pays for the difference. You pay about 1/3 of your income. The city covers the rest. Right now, approximately 68,000 New York households use it. It is the largest city-funded rental assistance program in the entire country. In 2023, the city council passed 2 laws expanding it. The expansion would help people facing eviction before they end up in a shelter. It removed the work requirement. It raised the income limit so more working families could qualify. Adams vetoed those laws. The council overrode the veto. Adams sued. The appellate court said the council was right. Adams appealed again. Then Mamdani won the election. He promised on the campaign trail repeatedly over and over again to drop the suit. Christine Quinn heard him say it. She runs WIN. WIN is one of the largest homeless service organizations in New York. Here is how she described the last time a mayor made the exact promise about the exact same program.
It feels like a betrayal. I mean, it was in a true political sense, a promise made on the campaign trail and a promise broken once he got into City Hall.
Now, 2 years ago, former Mayor Eric Adams tried to block the expansion of the city's housing voucher program, but was taken to court.
On March 25th, 2026, Mamdani's law department filed a new appeal to the Court of Appeals, the state's highest court, using Adams' exact legal argument. The city council did not have the authority to expand the program. The city cannot afford it. Underline that. The city cannot afford it. Those were Adams' lawyers' words. Mamdani's lawyers signed their name under them.
Mamdani says expanding the program would cost $10 billion over the next 5 years.
I've said time and again that what I would like to do is take every action possible to end the homelessness crisis. I also have to be honest with New Yorkers that while we all predicted that it would be a difficult fiscal situation that we would find in January, there are very few who believe that it would be at the scale that we have found.
We believe the administration should drop the litigation. We've been saying this for months. The continuation of litigation really serves to delay the ability to reach a settlement.
Now, even without this expansion, the cost of this housing voucher program is still expected to grow by almost $4 billion over the next few years.
Now, here's the part nobody in mainstream media connected, and I held it until right now because I needed everybody watching this video to understand the full scope of what was being argued in that courtroom before you see what the math actually says. Mamdani's stated reason for the appeal, follow me here, on record through this spokesperson, is that the voucher expansion costs too much. The city can't afford $10 billion over 5 years. That is the argument his lawyers are making to the state's highest court right now. Let me give you the math his own side produced. A report from WIN, the same organization Christine Quinn runs, found that implementing the voucher expansion would save New York City approximately $635 million on shelter costs over 5 years. Here's why. A voucher costs the city roughly $75 per night to keep somebody in their own home. A single adult in a city shelter costs $300 a night. A welfare hotel with minimal services is $400. The voucher is cheaper than the shelter by 4 times, and that is not Tyson math or Steiner math, if you know what I'm saying. That is the city's own Department of Social Services data. So when Mamdani's lawyers tried to stand in the Court of Appeals and say that the expansion is too expensive, what they're actually arguing is that it is financially smarter for New York City to pay $300 a night to keep people in shelters than $75 a night to keep them in their own homes. That is the math underneath the legal argument here. And this is the same mayor who told you at a podium in Brooklyn that we have spoken about this crisis long enough, and it is now time that we do something about it. Since the council passed these laws, more than 42,000 evictions have taken place, an estimated 25,000 of which could have been ultimately prevented. New York City Council member Parina Sanchez, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Committee on the Housing and Building in March 25th, 2026. That's what she said. The woman who wrote the expansion laws said that publicly on the record, the same day that Mamdani's lawyers filed the appeal. 42,000 evictions, 25,000 of them, by her count, preventable if the program had been allowed to actually work. Not 25,000 units on a 10-year construction timeline. 25,000 families already in New York City, already in apartments, who got evicted while the lawsuit kept the program locked and tight. Those families are not in Mamdani's press release or in his speeches anywhere. They were not at the Brooklyn podium. All that, you guys, is bad enough, but here's where the story stops being about housing plan and starts being about philosophy. Policy numbers don't move people. People move people. So I want to give you a name. Juan Figueroa, 57 years old, Bronx, New York, Tremont neighborhood. He moved into his apartment in 2017 with his mother and his sister. Both of them have since passed away. He lives alone. He can't work because of a physical and mental health problem. He owes more than $33,000 in rent in arrears, so he's behind $33,000. He's now facing eviction right now. Under the expanded CityFHEPS program, one of the city council members passed in 2023, the one that the appellate's court upheld, the one that Mamdani promised to implement on day one. Juan Figueroa would likely qualify for a city voucher. The city would cover the gap. The gap is absolutely outrageous, by the way. He might possibly keep his apartment. He might not end up on the streets. Mamdani's lawyers are in court right now arguing that the city cannot afford to run that program. especially if everybody's got $33,000 in arrears, you know? And Juan Figueroa said this to the city, the New York outlet, on record. He promised this thing. The thing people need most help with is paying rent. And here's the part of the housing announcement that should embarrass anybody who covered it without reading the fine print.
People like home ownership because they like control, and that's been perverted by like deep racism and deep classism in our societies. And why rent control is really important is because rent control alters the power dynamic between renters and who owns the building.
So meantime, a large crowd gathered outside of the mayor's residence last night calling for the governor, Kathy Hochul, to remove Mamdani from office. They claim that he has failed to address rising radicalization and anti-Semitism. And it doesn't stop there, though. The criticism. Mamdani has openly targeted the rich in New York City, threatening to tax billionaires like Ken Griffin, among others, to pay more to help support the government programs.
Tenant director of New York City, Mamdani's own appointment, said on camera that property ownership is racist. The same administration is in court right now arguing that the city cannot afford to give housing vouchers to people who are being evicted from the apartments that they're renting. One arm of Zohran Mamdani's administration says ownership itself is the problem. The other arm is fighting court to keep people from getting help and stay in their apartments that they're already paying for. That is not a coherent housing philosophy. That is two different political performances running simultaneously for two different cameras. And the one that cost Juan Figueroa the most is the one running in Albany. And here's a receipt that runs the quote-unquote city can't afford it argument, and nobody's putting these dates next to each other. February 26, 2026, 1 month before Mamdani's lawyers filed the appeal to block the $10 billion voucher expansion, Mamdani flew to Washington, D.C. He walked into the White House and shook hands with President Donald Trump, and he asked Trump for more than $21 billion in federal grants for a single project. Sunny Side Yard in Queens. A deck over a rail yard, 12,000 new affordable houses. $21 billion federal money from Trump for housing Mamdani wants to build and announce.
I think Mamdani won because he was the anti-establishment candidate. In fact, I give him a lot of credit. Sure. He ran a good, very, very strong social media campaign, and he captivated a lot of audience because he's young, he's vibrant, he's charismatic, he's energetic, and he was going up against someone like the likes of Cuomo, who seemed like this older dinosaur. But there's this big attention sort of ballooning around an election. After that, people really kind of don't pay enough attention about the actual policies once they're implemented.
That sentence right there is the entire case for this particular video. Mamdani captured the campaign on a promise about housing vouchers, about a lot of things, but mainly housing vouchers. He implemented the policy by fighting that promise in court. The gap between those two things is where Juan Figueroa's eviction notice actually lives. He flew to Washington to ask Trump for $21 billion for housing he chooses to build. He filed an appeal in Albany to block $10 million for housing that he promised to deliver. The variable is not the cost. The variable is the actual control. The housing is his $22 billion plan. He builds it. He controls it. He cuts the ribbon. He holds a press conference. The housing vouchers he's fighting in court, those go directly to tenants. No ribbon, no Brooklyn podium, no spectacular announcement, no credit. My friends, at least in my opinion, that is the only explanation for why these two numbers are treated so differently by the same man in the same city in the same fiscal year. This case is now before New York Court of Appeals. That is the end of the state road. Whatever they decide is final unless somebody takes it federally. A ruling is expected before the end of the fiscal year of 2027's budget cycle, June 2027 by the latest. The court sides with Mamdani's lawyers. The city wins the appeal. The voucher expansion dies. The 47,000 additional households the city's own independent budget office estimate could help. They won't find help. Juan Figueroa has to figure it out now, and He doesn't get the voucher. He goes into a shelter that costs $300 a night. The city pays 4 times more to house him, worse than the voucher would have. If the court sides with the council, the expansion was lawful, as the appellate court already ruled. Mamdani's lawyers lose. The expansion has to happen. The city has to fund it. And the mayor, who just announced $22 billion in new housing construction, will have to explain to every reporter in New York why he spent over a year fighting in court to avoid implementing a program the courts twice said was legal.
When they talk about stewardship, who's appointing these stewards? He is. We have C. Weaver. This is taking property. And how are they going to do that? They're going to fund non-for-profits, but first and foremost, they're going to weaponize the building department. And they are going to go after private home ownership by penalizing those people by sending in the building department and slamming them with fines that just don't make any sense, and to the point where they eventually will suffer and not be able to pay these fines, and the city will ultimately become the stewards of your property. Yeah. It's out of control.
The mechanism she's describing, the city taking over buildings from landlords who accumulate unpaid fees, is a real legal tool, and it's been used before. Palladino's question is legitimate. Who decides what buildings get taken, how they get taken, and who appoints the people who decide? Those are real accountability questions in any city. The land with extra weight in a city where tenant director just said on camera that property ownership is racist, and the mayor is simultaneously fighting in court against a rental assistance program that helps people stay in private apartments they already have.
So why'd you pick that 200,000 number?
So this is what the city is doing ourselves. And what that means is the most ambitious plan we've ever seen for affordable housing as one part of a larger housing goal of what we will see produced across the 5 boroughs, including from the private sector. But what's so critically important is, you know as well as I do, a lot of New Yorkers, when they see buildings going up in their neighborhood, they sometimes ask themselves, is this going to be built for me? Is there going to be room for the New Yorkers who are being priced out? This housing that we're talking about, it's going to be affordable for New Yorkers.
Which means the $22 billion of taxpayer capital is committed to a city-built, city-controlled housing stock over the next 10 years. And the question that nobody at the podium in Brooklyn asked is what happens to the people who need housing in a year or two, this year, the people facing evictions right now in 2026. While the city is 3 years into a construction timeline and still paying $300 a night to shelter them because the voucher program is tied up in the state's highest court.
We can keep people in their homes, and we can build the homes that they need to live in. We have spoken about this crisis long enough. It is now time to do something about it.
The mayor hoping to build 200,000 more affordable units in the city over the next decade. His plan to invest $22 billion into housing over the next 5 years, $5.6 billion of that for the city's public housing authority, and a $5 million loan program to help struggling landlords recover unpaid rent and keep affordable housing available.
The biggest critics of the mayor's plan have been landlords and real estate developers who say that any rent freeze puts the squeeze on them.
His lawyers said the opposite in Albany on March 25th. Both statements have his name on them. One of them was announced to cameras with a 112-page document. The other filed in a court brief. The people who know the difference between the two statements are the ones who can't afford a lawyer on their own.
He's like really the first mayor that I've heard even talk about supporting community land trust.
The mayor says over the next 5 years, the city will invest $5.6 billion in NYCHA. Critics say it's a drop in the bucket, but the mayor says this will target large capital improvements.
That's big ticket items in buildings, such as the roof, boiler, and elevator. That will make a dent.
The New York Apartment Association says the plan falls short of addressing the crisis facing rent-stabilized units, which make up 40% of NYC rentals. Ann Korchak is with the Small Property Owners of New York.
It seems a lot more to do with housing politics than housing policy. And I'm worried about weaponization of a housing agency, HPD.
America, here's the frame that will not be written until the court rules. When the Court Appeals issues its decision, which is coming before June 2027, that ruling becomes a public document. Mamdani's $22 billion housing plan is already a public document. Both will sit in the same archive, dated within 14 months of one another, under the same mayor's name. If the court sides with his lawyers and the city wins, the public records will show that May 2026, the mayor announced the most ambitious housing plan in New York City history. And in that same year, those same lawyers successfully argued that housing vouchers for families facing evictions were something that New York City simply could not afford. Press conference and court briefs, same year, same mayor. The families who got evicted while the appeal was pending will be in shelters that cost the city 4 times more a night than keeping them in their own home. They will not be in a press release. The mayor who told Juan Figueroa the thing people need most is help with paying rent will be 3 years into a construction timeline that does nothing for anybody who needed housing in 2026. This is the same playbook, my friends, every single time a progressive politician tries to run 2 economic stories at once. The big announcement gets the podium, the press release, the newspaper, all this other garbage. The broken promise gets the lawyer. He found $22 billion for a press conference. He found a lawyer for the promise. Let me know what you guys think about this. Drop it down in the comment section down below. Smash the like button if you kindly would. Share, subscribe, and as always, guys, I'll catch you on the next one.